Welcome to foundersmetal.com, the place where inspirational founders share their battle stories.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to another episode of Founders Metal. Today, we've decided to go off the beaten track and speak to funders. And today, we're joined by Moushmi Patel. Moushmi joins us from Sanari Capital. She's a principal at Sanari. Welcome, Moushmi.
Hello to you and your audience.
Thank you so much, Moushmi. And thank you so much for joining us. Moushmi joins us from a storied career. She's had an MBA. She is a qualified chartered accountant as well under South African law. She's an investment banker. She's worked at PwC. Ex-investment banker. Has worked at PwC as well, sort of a consulting aspect to that, I suppose. And has now joined this private equity house, which I believe is called Sanari Capital. She also did an MBA with me, and so I'm very honored to have her join us today. Again, welcome.
So thanks, Patrick, for the opportunity to be a part of your founder journey.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, no, it's an honor. And Moushmi, I usually ask for what inspired this move, or in your case, joining Sanari. What inspired you to join Sanari?
I think it wasn't really an inspiration, but it was more along the roads of an opportunity sort of arose. So just to give you a bit of background about Sanari Capital, it is a very startup company. Even though credentially on our website it's been around for 3 years, it's really only started to gain traction in the last year or so. So the role was to help build Sanari into something hopefully great in the future years. So in a way, as well as I'm a funder, I also have an entrepreneurial journey that I'm going through myself. So I can speak to both sides of it.
Sure. And what was your inspiration then in actually, joining a startup environment like this post MBA? You could have gone back into investment banking and getting a cushy job. What motivated you to join Sanari?
For sure. So what motivated me to join Sanari was it was more to build something that was greater and something that I could create a legacy, as opposed to being on the hamster wheel and working for someone else. So it was really, I saw the opportunity to just have something that was mine. And I also believe that if you are going to create something, it's nice to work in a team as opposed to an individual, because that gives you the ability to bounce off ideas and draw into different networks and expertise. So it was really, I think, a perfect opportunity. And given that I had done my MBA, I was already sort of a student living off whatever I could find and savings. And so it was easier to make the jump because I was already at this bare minimum type point financially, and I wasn't in this cushy job. So making that leap was a lot easier, I think, from that point of view.
All right, that's interesting. I picked up from that building a legacy was key for you, and having that opportunity is one of the main factors as to why you joined Sanari. Joining an inspiring team, professionals,
for sure,
to cross-pollinate and grow this business together. But also, why not? At the same time, why not? And in your case, perhaps it was a little bit easier or not, because you could have gone back into employment, but maybe leaving employment again would have been harder than actually just going into Sanari. So
I think it's a bit of a mix. I can be quite honest that it is emotional, because things don't work out the way you expect it to work out. Just to give you a bit of background, I think we had raised funding in 2015, and so when the idea came to join, I was supposed to join a more established company And then what happened was Nene Gates happened in December, and everyone who wanted to invest in our company, they all said, well, we're not investing in South Africa. And so essentially I came in and we had no money, and going through the emotional journey and pitching to various people to say, listen, this is what we're going to do. We're going to build a private equity firm. We're going to make it happen, and have people turn around and saying, well, it's great chatting to you, but we're actually not interested in the economics of this country until we have political stability. We're actually not going to invest. And then we started targeting South Africans, and South Africans were like, well, very uncertain, maybe we should move our money up offshore. And so it was really challenging. And the emotional side of that, there were many times where I would go home and I'd be like, well, maybe I should just call it quits and go and find a job and go back to corporate. And I think that the big thing is it's about being persistent. I won't say we're fully out of the woods yet, but I think things are starting to turn. And I think South Africa is starting to become a bit more stable. People are kind of out of that nervousness, and everyone's a bit more calmer. So I think things will get better. And so I'm being persistent, and hopefully it will work out.
Awesome, Moushmi, and I believe it will. You mentioned persistence is key, and you have that persistent spirit. I think that actually you've answered my second question around what was the biggest challenge you faced so far in your journey with Sanari, and that is getting funding from alternate sources when economic bad news came out. And you mentioned the lesson from that is persistence. Persist.
Yeah, for sure.
And is there any other lesson from that, you think? Would you be persisting in the wrong way, or do you have to be flexible?
So I also think, there are decisions that we made where I think you have to trust your gut and not just be persistent for the sake of being persistent. You also need to walk away. I think as a founder or a person starting out something, you want to cling to your idea, but sometimes your idea needs morphing in order for it to succeed. And so you have to be open to other ideas, and I think that's also very key is, your initial idea will change during your journey, your entrepreneurial journey.
Marshall, that's fantastic. In fact, that's one of the things I advise my clients is around the need, not just for persistence, but flexible persistence. Having an ultimate vision, and a big one, hopefully, to motivate you, but being flexible around how you get it. Modifying your idea based on what you get as feedback, because ultimately you're serving customers and clients.
Yeah,
so you may have your assumptions, but you need to tailor them to what is actually possible based on feedback. So that's incredible feedback around flexible persistence, and not just headstrong, like ramming into the wall. Rather go around the wall if you can, go under or over. So that's brilliant. Thank you so much. Moushmi, your current role as a principal, how do you describe it? Say in a sentence.
So what I do is I do a lot of deal sifting to see which deals we'd like to invest in, and then the role is about developing and going out and getting the funding on certain deals. Sometimes we need equity funding and sometimes we need debt funding, and it's developing a strategy for this investment to go forward, and I think that's pretty much my role at the moment, and I'm sure it will grow as the company grows.
That's great. Thank you for that. I'm not sure, based on this role, maybe let's step back a bit. Can you give us a bit more background as to your current fund size in terms of funding for entrepreneurs, SMEs in particular, and what are your investment criteria?
Okay, so Sanari specialises in, and I'm taking a bit of a step back because it'll give you sort of colour into the investment size, and we specialise in founder and owner-managed and family-owned businesses. And so we do look at, so we have two sort of pools which we invest in, and the one is in your lower to mid-market, so those are fairly large type companies. And when I say large, I'd say anything from 200 million EV to 500 EV. And then on the low...
EV being enterprise value.
Yeah, enterprise value, sorry. And this is the problem, is you get used to jargon and you forget that no one else understands your jargon. And then on the low end, we look at small, medium enterprises. So what we don't invest is in micro enterprises and lifestyle businesses, because essentially that's very dependent on one individual. And what we want to invest is in businesses, not particularly in one individual only. One of the things we do look is investing in teams, because with teams you're able to scale and grow a lot more quicker than as an individual, and leverage off different skills. So that's really key, and that's why we wouldn't look at micro and lifestyle businesses. When we look at the smaller range, we'll invest anything from 5 million up to 100 million. So that gives you sort of the size that we would invest in. When it comes to looking at early stage venture capital type companies, we don't necessarily look at it unless we see that it has the potential to scale unbelievably. And so what we do look at is more something that it doesn't necessarily need to be profit making, but has to at least have generated revenue and demonstrated that there is a market in which to invest in. So we would look at something that could turn profitable within the next year or the year after. So that's really our investment sort of flow.
Oh, brilliant. And how does what you've pitched yourself to get funding as a private equity firm? You've had to pitch,
yeah, for sure,
and to get funding, and you've sat in front of probably many pitches or received many pitches.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the key things, or maybe 3 key things, that an entrepreneur needs to do to be successful in pitching for funding?
So I think what we look for when we look at a team, we look at the ability for them to carry out what they're pitching. So if you're selling coffee, have you done this before? Have you shown a market? And like I said, showing a market means you've actually sold the coffee to someone or a couple of people, and you can then tell us, well, I've sold it to the whole of Gibbs, but I can also sell it to other universities, for example. So I mean, those are the type of things that we look at. The other thing is we look at the individuals, and we look at, and this is where it's really, really important for us, is we want people who have conviction in what they're selling. They're determined to get this off the ground, but they also have that willingness to be open-minded to criticism and feedback, and they're able to change. And so when we initially talked about flexible persistency, that's really what it comes down to, and that's what we would look at an investment team. I think those are the really key things that we would look at. I mean,
how about in the actual process of pitching? Is there anything that...
So generally the process is, and having been on both ends, it's always disheartening when you are pitching and someone's not interested, but it's to go through the motions. You come, you prepared, you have your business plan, but your business plan, I believe, shouldn't be more than 5 slides, max 10, because you've got to be concise and to the point, but also if you understand your investors, because there are some investors who want the 50-page document and want to know that you've researched every angle and you've considered everything. But then there are a lot of people who want a 5-page document, but they want you to have done the 50-page equivalent of work. So you need to know your stuff, and you need to be able to answer any questions that come your way, and you need to have thought of every scenario. So, I mean, those are the things that I've known from pitching to investors and what they look at. And also the other thing is, when they give you feedback or they give you things to look at, you need to go back and you need to research it, and you need to thoroughly engage with the feedback that they've given you, and then go back to them and answer their questions, because that gives them a lot more comfort that you're serious about this venture. So those are the things that I've noticed investors looking at from that side. I think.
Well, no, I mean
that's about it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And you mentioned something there that I wanted to delve a bit deeper into, around actually working the room while you're pitching. You may have investors who, maybe as a power strategy, pretend to be disinterested, or maybe are generally disinterested, but having the remaining unflappable and continuing with your presentation. Is there anything you would suggest for other founders or looking for funding who are confronted with that situation? What worked for you?
Very much so. So I think when you're looking for an investor, and this is very important, and I can't stress it so much, is that yes, you're looking for funding, but you're also looking for someone who will bring benefits to your business. Mm-hmm. So it is very important that if you don't feel comfortable with the person you're pitching to, and you feel like there is a power struggle and there are things, maybe that's not the investor for you, because at the end of the day, these are people who you're going to need to work with for the next 5 years. And so you want to have an investor who understands where you come from, and someone who you can get along with and that you feel comfortable around. And so while you may think it is a pitch to them, it is at the same time, it's you're giving your baby, you're giving a part of your baby to this person. If you're not comfortable with them, then you should walk away as well. I think that's really important, and I can't stress that anymore, because I've seen people who've gone out and got investments, and they've done it for the money, and 2 years down the line there is unbelievable arguing between the investor, and it drains them, because your energy should not be about strategies that your investor wants. It should be about the vision of the business. And so it is important that you find someone that is so aligned with your train of thought and where you want to take the business, and you see value, besides from monetary value, but value in the way they think, in their network, and I think that's very key. So yeah, I mean, you can pitch to whoever you want, but understand it's about a relationship. And one of the greatest things that I've found through us getting investing money, and with us investing in other companies, is this relationship is built over a year, over a period of time. And it's not, and so when you have a business idea, if you need money, you should not go out on the day you need money. You should almost have that foresight to say that, okay, well, in 5 months' time or in a year from now, I know I'm going to need, so I can sustain myself for the first year, but the next year I'm going to need money. So from today, you should start engaging with investors and getting to know them, because the partnership, like I say, is not a 1-year partnership. It tends to be a 5 to 10-year partnership.
Wow, yeah. That is really valuable insight and feedback. Thank you so much, Moushmi.
Pleasure.
And actually brings us to my last question around, when seeking funding, it is important as well to see what else other than the funding your investor can contribute towards the growth of your company. what would you say would be Sanari's value add in that respect? And yeah.
So, I mean, I think our value add is that we do have a vast network of people, and we have skills and expertise, and the team has done it before. So, you know, we've been down this investment journey a couple of times. But I think it comes down to the individual, because, for example, there may be things, I don't know, if you want to go into a mining industry, then I don't think Sanari is going to be the partner for you, because none of us have mining experience. So at the end of the day, you want a funder who understands your needs and wants, and a relationship in business is about compromises, but it should be stuff that you're willing to compromise over, and not stuff that will suffocate your business. And I think it's important to understand, like I said, to build a relationship with your investors for the future, because then you'll understand exactly what you are looking for in an investor.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I picked out from that you open doors for your investees.
Sure.
You provide skills, particularly in your areas of focus where you have experience.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned telecoms.
Yeah, I mean, I think what Sanari focuses on, and we look at a lot of tech companies. We look at education type businesses, retail businesses, anything that kind of has the ability to grow aggressively. We wouldn't look at stuff that we're not specialists in. So stuff like insurance companies, I don't think we'd invest in one, because none of us have that inner deep regulation knowledge, or in banking type businesses. But we would look at fintech. I think we open doors to most type of investments.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And you mentioned something there that I just want to maybe end with. Building those relationships with funders. I mean, what is the best practice around that? I have read around being introduced being very important. If possible, it would be great to be introduced by someone that the investors like yourself know and trust. Or what would you recommend in terms of how did you do it? Build the relationships with your investors. And what would you recommend for people who are looking to build relationships with you for the potential future funding?
So I always think it's, there are a lot of investment companies out there, and it's always nice to approach them and say, hi, I have an idea. I was wondering if I could have a cup of coffee with you. And through that, just have something casual with an individual. And from then you can get the sense of whether they actually think your idea is worthwhile, or they don't. And through that, I think it's you may say, well, can I every now and then just bounce off an idea? And generally people are more than willing to do that. So I think that would be one of the best ways to go around. I mean, just randomly pop mails to people. It may seem quite hectic because a lot of people don't respond, but eventually a couple of people will. And there are a lot of sort of stuff like Simodise, who promote entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, and different organizations that bring funders. And so today, this week, Super Africa is happening in Cape Town, where all the investors get together, and so it's nice to attend all of these little events that happen, and go and introduce yourself and your business, and do an elevator pitch, like a 1 minute, 2 minute elevator pitch to a person, and see if they're interested in investing with you. I do think that you need to take the time to get to know your investors over a couple of months before you pull the trigger and actually accept cash from any individual. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm picking up from that cold calling actually works, and don't hesitate to do that. Send out an email, ask for a meeting, ask for a coffee, but make it make it informal initially. Don't
I think
don't send a full
yeah.
50-page business plan initially without.
I mean, if you've got an amazing business and you want to do that, you can.
Sure.
I mean, we have a screening process, but if you want to really get to know your investors, maybe just make it a bit more casual.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And you also mentioned attending events around entrepreneurship, getting funding. You mentioned Super Africa happening now, and also doing your research. And you mentioned doing it pre-investment, but actually maybe even pre-contacting you, so finding out what's important for this investors. Are they the right ones for you? And getting to know your potential investor, and then reaching out in a way that actually speaks to that, and not just like, oh, I don't even know your name. Who are you? I just want to see you. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
sure.
Making it personal in that way,
Yeah.
and trying really to establish meaningful but authentic connection between yourself and the investor. I think that you've answered everything I can think of in terms of questions.
Perfect.
Could you leave our listeners with one quote or whatever you want?
I don't have anything profound, but I would say follow your dreams and believe in yourself. I think a lot of us just forget to believe in us. And I mean, you have all the confidence, you have all the ability and the will. So go out, make it happen, make money, make it rain.
I love it. And maybe actually to add, what if you were to ask anything of our listeners, or if you want to maybe send them a message, what would you be? I mean, for your business, a little bit maybe ask for help. What help would you ask for from our listeners?
Promote our business. Yeah.
Okay.
I think everyone's problem as a startup is
Sure.
funding.
Sure.
And getting the right funders, and when you start, you realize you're not the only person out there who's got a business idea. So the more people talk about your brand, and
The better. All right.
So
And how can we promote your brand?
I'm not sure. Just keep about it. I think your
What is
audience.
your Twitter handle?
So we're at. And you can contact us at connect@sanari.co.za, and we have a Facebook page called Sanari Capital. So, yeah.
That is amazing.
So
these are the ways we can interact with you and maybe even form relationships.
yeah. Okay. So our Twitter handle at Sanari Capital. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you so much, Moushmi, for coming on the show and for sharing your insights and wisdom with us. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Thank you for joining us at foundersmetal.com. Gather your strength and strike while the iron's hot.